Okay, good evening. This is a meeting of the Freeport Withdrawal Committee, March 6, 2014. And we have Kate Werner, Rich DeGrandpré, and Murray, and we're expecting Dennis King in a few minutes to join us. There seem to be no members of the public at this time, but we'll hang in there. Let me start the presentation so everybody sees that. Okay. Okay, so the first item of business is to waive the reading of the minutes and accept them as written. So have we all had a chance to review the minutes?
I didn't bring this in.
That's okay. I did read through them.
You did okay.
Yeah, they were fine.
All right, so can I have a motion to waive the reading of the minutes and accept them as written?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, any discussion on that? I think they looked fine. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, none opposed. And that goes on. So now comment time. And some folks mentioned to me they might show up tonight, but I don't see them. So we'll move on. And I think if people come in later on, we can always hear what they have to say. I think we can be pretty flexible as long as it doesn't. All right, we'll move on to new business, and I think we're just going to review some of these points out for the last few meetings, and then review the meeting for folks online. And so we'll start with the any progress that we may have had on the or Freeport School District Visioning Forum that we're talking about. Rich, you and I get together, and I don't think we did, about possibility of who might be a facilitator. So we should maybe do that tomorrow.
I have I can give them to you, or I can actually contact them also. Okay. If they maybe send us just a brief overview of what they do.
That would be great.
Okay.
If you would do that, that would be great.
Yeah.
I've been in touch, as I said, with Edwards, and we've been back and forth. He sent me an email with a couple of. I had a chance to reach out to them. I was planning to do that tomorrow, so I'll start talking to those folks as well, and to see what a panel might look like. Okay. I think we were hoping to get this done at the last week of March, but it's going to be tight. Get everybody scheduled in.
Well, and you said Tom wanted to kind of help if he could, and he'll be back soon after that.
First week of April, he said.
So maybe if we move that another week or so, that's not a problem.
Might not be a problem.
The other question I had along the same kind of vein, somewhere along the line, looking for somebody, and not until we get closer to some sort of an agreement here, to help us build a fairly reflective budget going forward. Mm-hmm. So we can keep that in mind as we're reaching out to folks to consult with us.
Sure. Yep. No, that's a good point, and I think we'll want to find someone that can work with us to do that after we get the agreement largely fleshed out. Yep.
Yeah, we should. I know Dan had suggested a couple, and we spoke with Jeff Hole even during the interview. He said there were one or two folks he could suggest also. So, okay. I want to remind you guys also is if we have questions that are more municipal in nature, yep, or older school-related issues that we need some historical perspective on. Jeff has said whether we chose him or not, he's certainly any way he can. So in the town, it's they'll so if there's something he can help us with perspective on the way we did things in the past, mm-hmm, which I think, mm-hmm, is the second part of what we're hoping to do.
Yep.
He's willing to help however he can.
Okay. Terrific. That's great. So I think that's where that project stands. It'd be great if you get in contact with some facilitators, and we'll start that ball rolling, and then I'll continue to try and herd the cats on some kind of forum panelists, and we can begin to talk about specifics maybe next time, next week. Okay.
One of the other pieces we talked about was trying to reach out to some of these other communities around us. Did you?
That's our next agenda item.
Oh, okay. I hadn't read that far.
Yeah, so I think, Kate, you want to give us an update on what happened in the next last on that?
Absolutely. We had put together a list with the contact information, and at this point, we've reached out to Baxter through Michelle Forge, who's the head of the school there. I'll be at Sewell High School with our head math teacher. And head of the math department, I should say. And she has been in meeting with us, following up on that. And then I know you said, Pete, that you had spoken with Ray from, he's the school board chair from the school department, as far as trying to make a connection there as well.
Exchanged voicemails with David Ray today. Just got a call back a little while ago, but I was in a phone meeting. But he and I'll talk tomorrow. He said he's in the office tomorrow night sometime, so I'll give him a ring and connect. I'll report out by email. Sure that was. But
I found it interesting that the working group said they talked to Yarmouth and they were in community, not in
there's a
community.
moratorium, right?
Yeah,
There's a
there's a
moratorium.
moratorium. Maybe they just don't like them. I don't know. But we reached out to them before with the RPCs, and we were, as a community, we were being asked to form SUs. We actually had a couple of really good meetings with them, and I don't think there was no expectation going in that something was at the end of a very short process, but it was a really good conversation with them, and it's not something that's in it's a moratorium.
Right,
it was something that how we might collaborate on some of the offerings that everyone to be able to to offer.
Right. I know my understanding is there isn't a lot of capacity at the middle school or high school for taking a lot of kids. I know they take a handful of out-of-district kids, like our daughter there. Maybe that was what the approach was with regard to what the capacity might be for students to attend. Well, we're probably looking at more for collaboration on programming, extracurriculars.
Right, our ask is a little different, I think, than the RSU's ask. They're looking to put a good number of kids for high school, and we're really looking to see if there's some creative out-of-the-box thinking we can do that could be mutually beneficial to
and
both.
From our conversation last night, although it was quite limited, it sounds like they're trying to find some, take the whole block of kids, because they're trying to keep them all in one group. And I'm not so sure if that's realistic or if that's really what they want to do necessarily, or what communities want to do.
I think that and we don't know what the communities want to do, but the requirement is that they find a place that will guarantee to take them all. Whether or not they actually end up sending them all there is another thing. In other words, it doesn't have to be one place. They just have to have some certainty. That's the phrase last night in the meeting. 10 years of certainty for their high schoolers. They just need to have a place for every kid, such that there's not a situation where all the surrounding school districts say we're full up and there's 10 kids, without a place to go. That's the DOE wants to make sure that doesn't happen. So anyway, we have the begun outreach. We thought we'd prioritize Yarmouth, Brunswick, and Baxter, at least initially, as a first, and then we kind of start from there, going out to the other folks on the list, right? Is that what we agreed?
Yep. And Brunswick, I've practiced there. I was going to try to get you a phone number.
Okay.
That's probably the best way to go about it.
Yeah. Okay.
Otherwise, by email.
Good. So that's that. The data request, we had some feedback last night that there was some easy stuff to get. There was some harder stuff to get, and there was some they didn't understand what we were asking about. So Kate and I have a meeting tomorrow, or you're welcome to come, Rich, if you'd like, at 2 p.m. At the school central office, and meet with Shannon and Kelly and go through the list and really kind of try to put some. They said that they would actually have some of the stuff ready for us by tomorrow at 2.
Some of that stuff is pretty easy.
I imagine it's just a matter of running the Xerox machine. So we'll walk away with the packet, and then hopefully we'll walk away with the schedule for the rest of the stuff, and they'll walk away with answers to whatever questions.
See if you can get a clearer picture from them of, I guess, historical, not RSU, Freeport School District, because it really, they are the extension of the Freeport School District.
Mhm.
And I would imagine they would be the ones who would archive the older information. If they haven't, that it would be good to know, because I've spoken with Abby some. She was going to try and chase down the location of these things, whether they've been moved to the West Street Barn or whether they're at the community center in the archive area we have there, or where they are. And I didn't get back in touch with her before. I will chase that down on Monday.
Okay.
And if you can get a sense from them whether or not
Right
they
there
have
close
any of
tomorrow.
it. Yeah, I know.
I keep forgetting that, and then,
Why?
then every time I wake up on Friday morning, say, I have to go in and do something.
Just your car online.
That's true. We have explicitly asked in the cover letter to our thing for access to whatever archives they have. So what's one of the questions for tomorrow is to say, do they have anything?
Well, yeah, I think that's the big thing we need to know. If they,
We have nothing.
we just don't have that. You know? We have nothing before this date. Well, then that's fine. I don't know where it is, so we'll have to start chasing that.
My understanding is they have a storage space with some items in it, because we had requested before the panel, for instance, the tuition agreement before
Mhm.
the RC form, and I know that they had that in a storage unit. So,
And I'm sure we could get a copy of that from Pownell also.
right.
I mean, we can certainly request any information from Pownell Durham that we need using the FOIA process.
Yeah. So let's see. We'll see what they have for archive, and then hopefully they'll just let us go in there and either take the stuff or borrow the stuff or Xerox it anyway. To the extent that we need it, we'll see. I mean, I think to some extent that may actually be very useful for us, is the last snapshot of what it was like before, because as Richie points out, that we had it working before, we know how to do it. It's just a matter of looking back in
It
time.
might also be helpful if when you're talking with them, because Shannon was the superintendent and they had an agreement for central office and for some of the kids and what have you. It would be helpful to have those agreements that were in place with Lisbon and with Brunswick before, or if some kids were going to Edward Little, that was probably just a tuition agreement. But so it would be helpful if we have some idea how the communities, all of them, were operating before.
Mhm.
We were familiar with Pownell because most of the kids came here.
That's a good point, Rich. I hadn't thought about that. We'll ask about it tomorrow and see.
And I'm sure we can request that from the respective communities also, if available, or know that they can get their hands on it easier. It would certainly, all of these pieces would help us make a better decision or a better proposal, or what this group will have. The definition of an airplane crash, you run out of airspeed, altitude, and ideas. And I mean, plans come together because you ran out of ideas. And so.
Yep, fair enough. So I think that's worth that.
Yep. And then the list you were going to follow up with Abby, Rich.
Yes, I talked with her some,
That's
and
her
she was
discussion.
she was going to check the archive for the earlier things, whether or not the town has them archived, and she has not gotten back to me today. But she is. We got our presentation for capital budget, and there were a lot of requests for information from her, so she was probably pretty busy since Tuesday night. But I talked with her in person on Monday.
Okay, because there were the list of items, I think, just simple things like the budgets from before, and I can send that to you.
She had budgets. As a matter of fact, the list is right here. She
There
had
it is. Yep, that one over there.
this one here.
Great.
Yeah, this is the town
Okay.
side. Yeah.
Yeah, the town side, yeah.
Yeah, she had the budget we approved,
Okay.
but in many cases, even though we worked together and we were handed out parts of detail for certain things, kind of work through them, it wasn't part of what we approved. So she didn't have that as the what do I call it? We only had authority over the whole budget, not over individual items within it. But a lot of them, so it's a kind of fully assembled budget that has big numbers in it. not any of the detail.
Right.
And that's what we were trying, that's what we were working back to, because that detail would give us some information about how things actually.
I've seen some of those town budgets from before the consolidation, and the schools in there, that's like 3 times in the budget, right? So
It was relatively cryptic.
really nice to be able to peel that back a little bit, and see.
Yeah, and I think that the best source, I would guess, would be, I'm not really sure what we did. We abandoned school district, or did it become the RSU?
It ceased existing as an organization. So the question is there a requirement for it to, and it was a subcommittee of the town council, right? Wasn't it? I mean, technically?
No.
No,
They were
The end of
elected.
5-year or Carvel rule.
right, well, that's what I'm wondering, is what rules apply with respect to listing traffic?
Really, from what I'm hearing from some of them, they think they have different rules.
Yeah.
But my point is, you're required to keep certain records for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, 9 years, I don't know, whatever. So I would guess that, they'll find them somewhere, at least the last year. And if the last year that we were, is within the 5 or 6 years, if they're standing by the shredder getting ready to get rid of them, it's like,
Right.
I can tell you, I have records in R&D from
Right.
way long ago, because I just was lazy to throw them away, or I guess I burn them. But so I think that we need to just follow it backwards to figure out who's responsible and where they're keeping them.
Yeah, if anybody is, and if they are being kept, that's the question. I presume somebody's got, in this case, they probably used to exist at that West Street office building, and they probably moved them out, and if they moved them out, where did they put them? They must have put them somewhere. Can't imagine they would have incinerated them or.
Well, I can't imagine, 2 years into this or 3 years into this, they say, we won't ever need that, because everybody realizes this the 6-year.
Hey, guys.
Sorry, I'm late.
It's all right. We are live on the internet, so just so you know.
Internet.
Um,
I'm half alive.
what's that?
I'm half alive.
Yeah.
We were just going over the data requests and where various pieces of data may or may not live in the world.
Ah, yes, that was the topic.
So we have an update. We have a meeting with Shannon and Kelly tomorrow. I are going. You're welcome to come if you're around. It's at 2 p.m. But Kate and I can easily handle it. We're going to click through the ask, the RFI, and make sure that they don't have any questions. And then they said they'll actually get us some information tomorrow.
Oh, good.
And then we'll easy stuff, and then we'll hopefully get a calendar or a timeline for the rest of the stuff and answer their questions. And one of the big questions is where do the records of Freeport prior to consolidation live?
Oh, yeah.
They used to live in that West Street building, so they either building or they've been moved out somewhere, and if so, where and so forth. So we'll ask that stuff.
Archived, like.
Yeah, archive. I don't know what the plan. I don't know. I have no idea. So we'll find
And
out.
I know the consultant for town,
Chuck Lawton.
Lawton,
Hmm.
he had a bill from before. I don't
Yes,
know,
yeah.
you have to base on some detail.
He built a budget up first, and then he built it 2 ways, and I think what he did was take the budget apart to construct one of them. Then he went back to our previous school budget and built it forward the second time. One time, the first one just taking it apart. I think he didn't use a scalpel, he used kind of a, and so that's where he came up with a $4 million difference. Then we asked him to take a look at, with a little bit more finesse, and you folks had helped, the petitioning group had actually helped to guide here are some of the things that we're seeing here. And at the end of the week, when we had the last presentation, and we asked Chuck to come and talk with us, he said, at the end of the day, it really comes to kids you have to educate, and and what decisions you make around improvements at the high school. So the number could be 0, it could be, I guess it could be the $1.5 million, but as he finally was kind of it was kind of different, because it wouldn't be, it was the worst case in both scenarios, and you couldn't have the worst case in both. So, anyway, so I think notes and that information. So, I think we need to use it carefully because of the approach he took both times.
Yeah, when you say his notes, has anybody talked to him about getting access to anything other than the final report?
He had a lot of detail in one of the reports he submitted to us, so we probably can get that.
That was
And
a
it's one of the
question we
requests
had for Abby.
Yeah, it is. It's
Yeah.
one of the ones that's in here, and I have copies of his reports.
Right, sure.
I think we all do, collected them along the way. But I would say he had some worksheets and things along. So there may be more information that the town has, because he worked with Abby quite a bit and works with some other folks. So let me see if I can get more detailed information if we have it.
From Abby.
Yeah. He also did the projections for student populations.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking back through
Did
some
he
of
do
that.
those or refer to them from the?
No, he actually has a proprietary program for forecasting student enrollments going forward beyond.
That's a black art.
It is. Involves a chicken or feathers anyway.
Yeah, sure.
But he was he claimed to be able to do it fairly well. Back at what the RPCs worked with, clearly the guy who did those projections,
Yeah.
He needs to go back to training.
Right, but there were projections done for the high school
Renovation
renovation project,
yeah.
and then Lawton.
That were done by, which is the kind of the
Right.
blessed group that does the stuff all across the
Yeah,
state.
say it again now.
But Lawton took it,
NASDAQ,
NESDEC, it's NESDQ or something.
New England School.
Something,
Yeah.
Lawton took it from the birth rates, and he
Right.
all of that
Yeah,
in the report.
Yeah, he did provide us with all that information. You know, so I think that should be as part of our toolbox as we
Yep.
start to
Absolutely.
project forward.
So you're willing to follow up?
Hey, could I just ask for a 2-second update on, you had more confidence in Lawton's review? What I understand.
No.
Less lack of confidence.
Yeah, less lack of confidence. What he brought us the first time.
I've got a copy.
Yeah, what he brought us the first time was $4 million, and largely that was going to be you'd have to have, and for the $4 million, he said you'd either lose all the funding, or it was a scenario that you couldn't have. And so when we pushed him on it, he says, "Oh, I guess that makes sense. If you for the $4 million, you keep all the programs, just have 2 kids in a classroom." So basically he came with a revised version that he came at the number 2 different ways by more surgically looking at what we have for budget. So by building from our last Freeport budget, and he ended up at the 1.6, which is probably not too far, other than he didn't delve into the detail what the petitioning group
At
is.
the end of the day, I don't know what the right number is until we actually do the real budget.
Right.
But
Right.
he gave us something that was like the nightmare scenario, and then a worst case scenario, and then the reality is something that's going to be something
Yes.
different. And we'll end up figuring it out. And things that are school policy issues, like how many kids in a classroom do you want, how many teachers do you want, what kinds of programming do you want to offer and not offer, and those decisions that have to be made by a school board and
Gotcha.
administration that we won't even have the context to make or the
And
authority.
those,
to make, so.
even this class sizes only work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And beyond that, what happens is as you get into high school, it's how many kids are taking a course, and then it becomes course offerings. Do you offer, French all the way to year 12? Do you offer, how many languages do you offer, and how deep do you go? Is it third year, fourth year, fifth year? When the classes become one student, it's like we have to make some decisions around
Okay,
that.
so they had some
So
strict
not
headcount.
knowing how many kids, who they are, and what they're currently taking is going to, you won't be able to do that to actually construct the budget.
Gotcha.
Most AP classes are 7 or 8. So, right.
Yeah. So those are more expensive per kid, but the theory is that that's an investment that he's willing to make. Yeah.
But But one of the things around the AP courses and some of the higher levels of courses, I think one of the people we need to talk with going along is whether or not there is value beyond kids saying, yeah, I took AP this, or I took AP that, or AP this. When they get to college, is there a benefit from, because there are a lot of kids in calculus. When I was in high school, they got to calculus in college, and they couldn't hit their ass with both hands because they didn't get the year of trig they needed. With a full year of trig, there was no hard part in calculus. So I think we need to have a better understanding of that. So it's like we don't want to offer AP gym class because
but we can't take that stuff on here, right? You mean the school district needs to, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about after we get done,
right?
When we're gonna start to build some of the
Real numbers to it. Yeah.
That's when we have to have a better understanding of what that really means and what those values are. And are they real or are they perceived?
FWC, which is the data request, and we've taken a couple of detours from there, but
Thanks for that.
if there's nothing else on the data request, we'll move on to the next piece, which is just to go over what happened last night in the meeting at a high level. We met last night with the working group for the first time, and it was, I'm just basically going to go over a little bit, mainly for the people in the audience and for Joe. We met last night with the working group for the first time. It was I think it was a positive first step forward.
Definitely.
It felt the tone was set right. We got ground rules and how we're going to operate together as in the negotiation sessions. We agreed on some of the high level. To write them up and publish them soon, but we have to make sure that both parties get to see them because one of the things we talked about, we're going to take minutes and how we're going to share that out with the public. But the first thing we talked about was that they proposed we do a spokesperson type negotiation. There's one appointed mouthpiece for each party, and then and they do most of the talking back and forth, and then the work is done in caucus with each side. So we agreed to try that out. We'll see how that goes and if that works for us. The other thing we agreed is that we did agree we'll record the future meetings. Not agree to record the first one, but we all agreed to record subsequent ones the way we're doing tonight. So there'll be recordings of those. I don't think we'll record the caucuses, so I think that'll be, you'll get a recording of whatever we have.
Whether the results are.
Yeah, what the actual substantive negotiations, and then we'll publish minutes in the form of, essentially in the form of the clauses that we TA as. So, meaning tentative agreement, and that's essentially a form of negotiation where we go through and look at individual clauses. We agree together that this clause looks good, but we also reserve the right to, in the context of the whole agreement or in the context of clauses, to say, well, actually, it doesn't feel right in context, so we can open up things based on that. So it's essentially a way to reduce friction and get some momentum in a negotiation and move it forward. So we agreed to do that. We agreed to some basic ground rules that make sense, which is no substantive conversations offline. If we're not in the meeting, we're not going to have substantive conversations. We can have planning meetings and that sort of thing, but no substantive discussions directly by email or in person.
Between the working groups.
Between the parties, yeah. We said we would, we agreed we'd have no public comment at the negotiation sessions, but we would have each party is having public comment at their own meetings, and that would be the forum for public input. And the negotiation meeting about doing the work of the negotiation. Public's welcome to come in and attend. I think those were the highlights. I can't think of anything else. I'm sure there may have been other detailed ones, but those were the big ones that I can remember. Anybody else? Anything else? No.
Pretty much
Okay.
it.
I think that's about it.
We checked off
Length of the
items.
meeting.
Length of the meeting, we said 9:30. Also that there may be, we reserve the right to waive that if mutually agreeable, if we got momentum going. We also began to look at a timeline and look at a fairly aggressive timeline that probably won't happen but we'll see if it does. Well, at least the first meeting, we're going to take a stab at it. The timeline we outlined had us submitting a draft to DOE before May, and getting the ball forth in that time frame. And we vetted that with our legal advisor, who said that was aggressive but not inconceivable. So present it and we'll see what happens. But the other thing we agreed upon was the idea that we would take on we'd take on the easy items first. So we'd try to present the draft, we'd click through in TA as much as we could without working hard, without breaking a sweat, and then go back and have identified the issues that are stickier, including the one issue that we know is going to be sticky, and then work our way through fashion towards culminating with that final issue, which happens to be the issue that we need more information from external parties on anyway before we decide. So that seemed to make sense to everybody.
I think we started out, the first thing we talked about is having, kind of a goal to do what's best as much as we can for every kid wherever they are. And I think that was significant.
And I think that is also significant. I've attended, some meetings where people are negotiating, whatever. And at the end of the day, what was important to me is the only thing I'm really concerned about. And I think at the end, I think that it's really
This is bigger than that. Yeah.
If we're in good faith and they're going to negotiate in good faith, we really need to keep the kids at the front of this, because they're the ones who.
This is all for them. This is all for them.
We didn't have kids, we wouldn't have schools. So that's what this is about.
Yeah. So that seemed to be everybody nodded their heads about it. The other thing everybody nodded their heads about is that we're shooting for a November vote on this to get this out of the way in as expeditious manner as we can. So that seems to be all.
Yeah, and I was glad to see that from them too, that they agreed that it far more sense to have this on the ballot in November.
Yes,
because it would get the largest opportunity for folks to weigh in on.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
We also discussed that it's our responsibility as a committee to draw the agreement.
That's right.
And that we would be looking to minimize legal costs as much as possible by making sure that we can give this to each other if we're going to have our attorney at the meeting for negotiation. Right.
So that we're going to try, both parties are going to try legal at the meetings, but if we do feel like we need to have legal, we owe them a notification, and they owe us a notification if they're going to have legal there 3 days in advance or something like that, so that we can have time to arrange. But I thought pretty good. I thought everybody seemed like we're eager to make this happen and get this done. We have a job to do, and I think that. So I didn't get the sense that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that a couple of times, Pete. That our job isn't to fix what's broken. Our job is to negotiate a withdrawal agreement. That's our assignment, and that's frankly their assignment. That's we're charged with making that happen once you start a process. So and they were nodding their heads too. They understood that's what our job is.
Yeah. No, I got that impression as well.
There was an individual who was going to be there but wasn't.
There were two missing from their committee, and then their advisory member was not there as well.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I think that it was a good meeting. We got we put a lot of things on the ground, so we know how we're going to operate going forward. I think the big test is going to be when we get together on the 20th.
Having presented a draft.
19th, yeah. Yeah, the 19th for the so that Wednesday, because I think at that point, the good news everybody will have it ahead of time is they won't be reading through it the first time.
Right.
You won't be seeing these crazy expressions on people's faces, but I think at that point we'll know whether some of the items that being relatively simple going forward are or are not. And I think that will give me a whole lot better idea what our time frame is really going to be going forward.
Yeah. Well, I think that's right. As soon as we click through that, will be enumerated in the agreement, and see how many TAs we get in the first night. So that'll be very telling. So speaking of which, one of the things we agreed is that we would provide a draft 1 week from tomorrow to that group, which is ambitious in and of itself. We have this meeting tonight. Dan is coming in a few minutes here, and we're going to work with him on providing him input, and he's going to take us through some discussion on that. And but he have a draft ready for us to review on our next Thursday meeting, and then present to the working group on Friday. So.
Will he meet with us again next Thursday if we need him to?
I think we should have him next Thursday, for if he's available. I presume he is, to present and discuss the draft
Will he actually generate the draft based on input from us?
tonight.
Okay. So we will have a. It would be helpful if he after tonight's work, if he can get that back to us, we can review it before our next meeting.
Yeah. So we'll talk with him about that tonight. He should be here. I told him 7:15, so he should be here in a few minutes. And we're going to do that work. I propose to do that work in executive session, and I think it'll be important for us to be able to talk freely with the legal. And if you want to stick around, Joe, we'll take public comment in a second here. So if you want to stick around, but we're flexible. We're mellow. It's just you. Yeah, we got 5 minutes, right? So, but
Some candy choices here.
prior to executive session, we've been joined by Joe Migliaccio, and I think we might entertain public comment if it's the pleasure of the committee.
Fine with me.
Oh, have you got anything to say? Come on up. I want you. You need to be picked up by the mic,
I think
Joe.
all council meetings should have a couch chair like this.
You could doze
Can we
on.
propose that?
Yeah, we can.
Just
Let me get my stuff.
no, thanks. That's okay then. Just two comments. Joe Migliaccio report. One is, I noticed that you said that the work you guys have tentatively agreed or fully agreed last night to have the joint, what you call, I think, negotiating working sessions, which my understanding is that's the only time where a citizen can address both groups in the same room. Maybe you consider offering, if nothing else, abbreviated comment, because out of convenience and out of the dynamic available here, actually, I've got, representatives I've voted for on one side of the aisle and voted for on the other side in some ways. So I could imagine that citizens at some point may find it valuable. And if you offer it up and it seems to be, overly burdensome or killing the flow, but as we all talk to elected officials, members of the committee like yourselves, we may have insights that seem, or even observations just watching, that we'd want to address to both parties, and it's just a little inconvenient to have to, and maybe non-congruent to have to go to one group and say one thing and then go and try to say the same thing. Sometimes it's really helpful to have both parties at the same time hear it, and it may inform the decision, but I don't think it needs to be too disruptive. That was one. The other one, it sounded like that was about timeline, and said, we're not sure we'll hit that, but I can't imagine you'd be too far off. I mean, that's a nice timeline, the May 5th, and even if you go to June 5th. I think the goal, you've heard a number of folks say before, is give the communities enough time before this November election to really digest what this is. And it's going to take a lot. It's really emotional. It wasn't like some overwhelming vote one way or the other, even to investigate this. So I think, you'll do a lot of good work. And if you give, I think, the community, maybe 3 or 4 months to digest this, knowing that maybe the commissioners will delay you about a month and a half or something maximum. But those are all my only comments about the public comment. And really glad to hear that you guys are already trying to knock off some TAs, as you call them. So thank you. And the last thing I guess I'd offer is I think I missed the discussion on outreach to nearby districts, but I'll say again, I really think that's an opportunity that you could as folks drag you in, whether you want to go there or not, you're going to be dragged in to this. What is the budget going to look like? And what I've heard you say before is maybe we can paint a very broad brush, but not get detailed. And I think you want to do that. But those communities potentially offer an opportunity to enhance that broad brush of possibilities, just like was done before, which was were things that were good to a community. And all you're doing is painting a vision. Look, we've talked to this community, we've talked to this community, they see them in the next 5 to 10 years. Opportunity here, just to maybe inform your, whatever that you get dragged into as far as offering educational opportunities. So, thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Just to summarize what we've been doing so far is, we've been reaching out to Yarmouth and Baxter, and then Brunswick is the next one on the list as far as.
Oh, that's right. I forgot there's a bus that runs from Freeport to Bath.
Right.
Yep.
Yep.
As well brought up last night was still keeping in touch with our current.
Definitely.
Totally.
Yeah,
And that
but
was-
we're in discussion with them, so that's definitely something we're reaching out to, but other communities and other schools, that's an opportunity as well.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, are those going to be informal discussions with the other communities?
Initially.
Well, I mean, that's like set something up initially, but would you envision
And we'll,
some kind of,
we talked about going in, maybe, and
Yeah.
not all 4 of us people meet at the same time, maybe 2 of us, or
sort
3
of
of us can
repeat
go.
what we
Yeah, what we did before.
did before? I think that'd be great, officials meeting together like that.
And,
And for me, that's one of those things where you'll have enough people in the room, you'll have to declare it, but I can't imagine it would be I can't imagine it would be something where anybody should be, probably nobody will attend. You know?
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Bye-bye.
See you
Thanks.
later.
You'll have to catch up on natural gas, you're gonna bring you up to speed.
okay, I'll talk to you soon.
All right, so, if it makes sense, everybody, why don't we, have a motion to enter executive session, and, Dan should be here any minute, and, begin that process.
I move that we enter into executive session. I don't know if we have we have specified,
The reason is to consult with our legal counsel.
Second.
You should, I'm trying to, somewhere I knew what they used to cite that.
Well, it's litigation strategy, it's I said strategy, but.
The section in,
Oh,
in the
they-
statute.
MSRA, blah, blah,
Yep,
blah, blah,
we
blah.
can- yeah, we
Right.
can do
In
that.
the future, we'll
We can do
we'll
I
that.
can
we'll
probably
figure that
find
out.
that in a.
Yeah, I know exactly
Sorry.
where that is. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
we'll
I
figure it
can
out.
cite it.
Yeah, so we can just add that to our minutes because there are times, again, that was when they said they weren't going to be keeping minutes and what have you. I think it's important that,
We'll have a recording now, so
Yeah.
we'll have a perfect set of minutes.
Yeah, we
It'll
have
be hours long. but it'll
verbatim
be
set.
perfect. All right, good. So we have a second on the table. Any further discussion on that? We'll fix it up for next time, so we'll make sure we're all legit and so forth, but for the moment it is what it is. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? None? Okay, we will enter executive session, and I'm turning off the recording.